Hey everybody, welcome to the video. Let's go over the 7-game, hopefully 7-game MLB DFS slate for today on Draftkings. But before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, you might as well hit that subscribe button. I'm here all season long trying to help you guys become better MLB DFS players, and I cover other sports as well, including NASCAR, which it's Daytona week this weekend, which if you don't know anything about Daytona, that's where all the wrecks happen, and it's very fun to watch on TV, and it's very, very fun to play DFS for. So if you've never played it before, come in, check it out. You might enjoy it. So check that out. That content will be out today, tomorrow, and the next day as well. So if you're going to keep coming back to the channel each and every single day or each and every single week, you might as well hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I post new content. And if you don't follow me on social media, I'm at Pennell16 over on Twitter, cpen16 on IG. And if you want some more content over on Patreon, obviously it's much appreciated. We got 320 plus people in there. You can hop into the Discord chat, and then you just get access to all the extra stuff that I put out each and every single day or each and every single week, depending on the sport. So if you're interested, links in the description below. If you're not, hey, that's fine. Let's just dive into today's slate. So pitching, not a lot of options I like. I think there's a couple of overpriced guys in the 9 and 8K range that kind of just forced me to play Max Scherzer, which I have no issues playing Max Scherzer. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball, so I feel pretty comfortable just plugging him in today because at SP2, I'm kind of just planning on playing Sixto Sanchez, which he's only 5,100, so that makes it very easy to play Max Scherzer, and if you just use this combo, you're only using about $16,000 at pitching, which I typically like to stay around $20,000 or below, and obviously we're way below that, so that certainly checks out for me. So Max Scherzer, I think he's a pretty easy fit on this slate, and he's going up against Philly, which isn't the greatest matchup in the world. Max Scherzer is a guy that actually will give a little bit up to the lefties, so guys like Bryce Harper, Didi Gregorius, I could see giving him some issues, but outside of that, he should be able to rack up close to 10 strikeouts, if not more. I mean, we know he's got elite numbers, 2.96 xFIP the past 2 seasons combined, 35% K rate, only a 6% walk rate. Now, like I said, the splits versus lefties are a little iffy on him, a 191 ISO to lefties, 321 WOBA, but still a 31% strikeout rate. He is downright just nasty versus righties with a near 40% K rate and only a 114 ISO, but I still think he's going to be fine here just because, look, he can overpower any lineup, and if you're looking at the Phillies splits versus righties, I wouldn't say it's too encouraging. 20% K rate's pretty low, 8% walk rate's pretty high, and 182 ISO is a little high as well, but they also are facing Max Scherzer, and he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. And if we're looking at his game log, for the most part, it's been good this season. Now, he's had a couple of down games. Now, one of them is because he only pitched 1 inning and he got hurt, so you kind of have to throw that out the window. So if you take that out, he's had 1 bad game, and that was his last start versus Miami, oddly enough. You know, one of the worst teams in baseball. We just saw Jacob deGrom strike out 14 Marlins last night, but it happens to everybody. But if you're looking past those 2 games, he's had 24, 24, 32, and 22, and his strikeouts have been there all season, so I like Max Scherzer, even though the matchup's not great, and there's a decent chance he could give up like a solo home run or 2. The strikeout should be there, and it should be more than enough to be viable in DFS. And I expect him to be very chalky, so even then, it doesn't really matter what he does. Because I remember when Trevor Bauer gave up like 4 runs and only scored 16 points, he was around like 80-some% owned, so it didn't even matter. And Vegas has the Phillies at 3.9 runs against them, 62% chance for the win, and 7 strikeouts. So yeah, I think we got to like Max Scherzer. Then we have a fun play in Sixto Sanchez. It's also a very fun name to say. Sixto, he's 5,100, and this guy can bring the heat. If you're looking at his splits, it's only a 1-game sample size because he has 1 major league start. But in that start, he had a 4.29 xFIP, only a 19% K rate, didn't walk anybody, high ground ball rate, didn't give up a ton of hard contact, but did give up a couple of homers. But this guy's definitely got potential, and this guy can pack heat. I mean, he's hitting triple digits and a decent amount of his pitches. Like, he has got some good stuff, that's what we want to call it. And he's certainly got tons of potential. He's a top prospect in the system. Now, the matchup versus the Mets isn't my favorite. I think guys like Michael Conforto could give him some issues, but he's only 5,100, so we're not expecting a complete game shutout from him. And he also only threw 66 pitches. I'd expect that to go up a little bit, but at only 5,100, we do not need much. Give us like 5-6 strikeouts, give up a couple of runs or 3 or whatever, and then just don't get absolutely blasted. And I think he's going to end up being a pretty good play. And I actually think he's going to gain some ownership today, too. Because, he's hit triple digits. I mean, he's got high velocity. He's definitely got potential here. The Mets aren't the scariest lineup in the world. Now, there's no implied team total out yet. I'd have to imagine it's going to be above 4, which is obviously isn't always ideal for your pitcher. But I think he's going to be a fine option here. If you're looking at the Mets splits versus righties, again, it's not going to look great, but a 21% strikeout rate. They do walk a lot. 166 ISO, 277 batting average, 123 WRC plus. It's not that encouraging, to be honest, but look, I like the price tag, and I think he's going to grade out the best value pitcher on today's slate. And he's going to allow you to spend up on your bats. So I'm really liking this Max Scherzer and Sixto Sanchez combo today because, look, it's only around $16,000. I actually think it is $16,000, and there's plenty of upside with both these guys. So that's pretty much my plans on pitcher. I mean, I think you can use a couple of other guys, like, Dobnak versus Detroit, and then, who's the other guy? Chris Bassett versus the Rangers. But even then, I just think they're a little bit overpriced. So give me Scherzer and then give me the cheap Sixto Sanchez, and then we'll move on to the bats. And we'll start with the catcher position, and catcher is pretty rough today. There's usually a couple of guys that really stand out to me, but honestly, just play whoever fits. I don't really see a reason to go out of your way to play any of these guys, but I put Danny Jansen on here just because I think the Blue Jays are the best team on this slate because they got a great matchup versus Chris Mazza. And this park in Buffalo, it's been pretty friendly to hitters. There's been a lot of high-scoring games here, so I'm viewing the Blue Jays as the top stack on the slate. The A's are also a very good stack. I really like the A's, the Blue Jays, and the Nationals on this slate quite a bit. I think the Red Sox are interesting as well, and so are the Rays. And also the Twins righties as well. But I like the Blue Jays a lot. They have the highest team total currently at 5.88. There's a couple of totals out that are not out yet, but I can't imagine they're going to surpass 5.88. Now, if you're looking at Jansen splits, not very good at all versus righties. A lot better versus lefties. But I am not scared of Chris Mazza. And I believe he gave up 8 hits in his last start. And the Boston pitching staff and the bullpen has just not been that good this season. So I feel like you can feel free to load up on these Blue Jay bats for sure. The high team total, it's been a good park for hitting, and Mazza is just not a great pitcher. So Jansen, he's fine if you just want to stack up the Blue Jays. Jonah Heim, I think that's how you say his name. I apologize if not. Jonah Heim, whatever it is. Jordan Lyles has pretty much been a punching bag so far this season versus both sides of the plate. If you're looking at his splits, he's always been more hittable to righties, but you can just load up the entire offense for the A's. I mean, Jordan Lyles has just been so bad. I mean, if you're looking at his splits to lefties, give him a 277 ISO, a 382 WOBA, and Heim's a switch hitter, so he's obviously going to have the advantage here no matter what. Now, versus righties, he is a little bit tougher with the 277 WOBA and a 164 ISO, but look, he's just been so bad this season versus either side of the plate. You can just load up the entire A's offense. I'd have no issues with that. Problem is, a lot of these guys are expensive, but there's some value plays on the A's that I think do make plenty of sense. And they have a 5.76 implied team total as well. Then Ryan Jeffers was the best cheap option I could find currently, 2,400. You just get a cheap righty on lefty matchup against Matthew Boyd. Now, Matthew Boyd, he's improved the past couple of starts, but to start the season, he also was kind of a punching bag. He was just not looking very good at all. But if you're looking at his numbers, he's got good strikeout rate, but he does give some power to righties with a 223 ISO. So I don't mind Jeffers at only 2,400, and the Twins do have a decently high implied team total on this slate as well. Dropping down to first base, there was a lot of options I could have put here, so if I didn't list your favorite guy, I'm sorry, but I want to list 20 first basemen. But I singled out a expensive guy, mid-range, and a cheap one. So Matt Olson, look, I like the A's quite a bit here versus Jordan Lyles. Like I already said, he's been a punching bag this season, and versus lefties, he's always sucked big time. And Matt Olson's a pretty darn good lefty that packs a ton of power. Versus righties, he has a near 300 ISO, 577 slugging, and a close to a 300 batting average. And like I said, Lyles, he gives away a ton of power to lefties. So Matt Olson, I think he's one of the top home run calls on the entire slate. I mean, I love the A's. Olson's a fine play. The only problem is he's 5,300, so it's not going to be as easy to fit him in as I'd like him to be. Then we have Vlad here at 4,300. So I prefer him versus lefties for the most part. But actually, if you're looking at his numbers last season, they were actually good versus either side of the plate. So I guess it doesn't really matter. It's just I prefer righty on lefty matchups for the most part. But he actually had a lot, like really good splits versus righties last season with a 174 ISO, 118 WRC plus, and a 293 batting average. This season he's been great versus lefties. I mean, fine versus righties as well. And he's been hitting pretty well recently, if I remember correctly. So I'm pretty sure that was his game log I was looking at. But yeah, I like Vlad here, like all the Blue Jays. He's only 4,300. He packs a ton of power, so love the upside here for Vlad. Then if you want a cheap option, we have Rowdy Tellez at 2,900. If you're looking at his splits last season, he actually had some better numbers versus lefties. 243 ISO, 513 slugging, 270 batting average. If you're looking towards righties, those numbers do come down quite a bit, but the power's still there with over a 200 ISO to righties. And look, I love the Blue Jays on this slate, so Tellez is a fine option. Dropping down to second base, he's also eligible in the outfield as well. And I just realized Luis Garcia is pulling up as a relief pitcher because there's a Luis Garcia that's also a relief pitcher, but he's a second baseman. So I'm just going to override the formula really quick, and I'm going to plug in second base. So sorry, that just got my eye. But anyway, Cavan Biggio, 5,100. I'm viewing him as one of the top plays on the entire slate. Like, if you want to spend up for one guy and it's Cavan Biggio, I have no issues with that whatsoever because I love the Blue Jays. Biggio is great versus righties. He's leading off, and I think he's an excellent play. He's also eligible in the outfield as well, which I think will boost his ownership. Anyone that has double or dual position eligibility, it's going to boost their ownership because you can play them in multiple spots. But looking at his numbers versus righties last season, 225 ISO, 119 WRC plus, and just overall some very good numbers. So, and Chris Mazza has a very low strikeout rate at 12%, 16%. Then whoever comes in after him, it doesn't really matter to me. So definitely Cavan Biggio if you're spending up. Luis Garcia, the second baseman, not the relief pitcher, is a fine option. Now his price is still listed at $4,000, which is also not true. All right, there we go. He's only $2,500. It's pulling up a relief pitcher in the A's and Texas Rangers game. They have the same name. But Luis Garcia is fine here at $2,500. He's been hitting better than a $2,500 batter. And I do like the Nationals on this slate. I have not mentioned one yet, but we're going to get to a couple of here coming up. But do you like the Nationals here? They have a team total over 5. Spencer Howard, he's just not that impressive of a pitcher to me. I mean, if you're looking at his other start this season, and don't get me wrong, he's a top prospect on the Philly system, so he may end up being pretty good. But in 3 starts this year, he's not been what I would say fantastic. Now, he was okay in his last start versus the Blue Jays, where he scored 12 points on 3.2 innings, but he's not going to work too deep into the game. And just overall, I think the Nationals bats should be able to get to him because I'll give them the advantage over Spencer Howard here. But like Luis Garcia versus a righty, I mean, he's just dirt cheap, and I like the Nationals stack on this slate. Jose Peraza, 2,200. If you need to go dumpster diving, he's okay versus lefties. Again, this park has been pretty good for hitting, but Ryu is a pretty good pitcher. I do like some of the Boston righties here, but I really wouldn't say I'm going to full stack against Ryu because he is a pretty respectable pitcher. If you're looking at his splits, 129 ISO to lefties, 125 ISO to righties, so it's not like he is a pitcher to pick on. He doesn't really walk any guys, and Wob is low on each side as well, and he gets a lot of ground balls. So I wouldn't say I'm really wanting to stack Boston, but I don't mind a couple of these righties as like one-offs for the most part. But Peraza's fine. Looking at splits versus lefties, only an 11% K rate, near 290 batting average, and there's no power numbers because he's just not much of a power hitter whatsoever. But he's okay if you need a dirt cheap option. Dropping down to third base, we have Matt Chapman at 5,400. He was scratched last night, but assuming he's playing today, he's going to be the top play at third baseman, just projection-wise, just because like Jordan Lyles has sucked this season. The A's are an excellent stack on this slate. 5.76 implied team total. Chapman's good versus either side of the plate. He had a 249 ISO to righties last year, 125 WRC plus, and over a 500 slugging. So I think Chapman's fine if you got the money for him, or if you're just stacking the A's. As Asdrubal Cabrera, 4,200. Just another lefty here versus Spencer Howard. Again, Howard's not complete trash, and I think he's going to improve, obviously. I mean, he's considered one of their top prospects. But so far, he's just not been great. And I'm going to side with these Nationals bats, which Vegas would as well. They have a team total of over 5. And if you're looking at Cabrera's splits versus righties, he's got a 194 ISO, 258 batting average, which isn't great, but 332 WOBA. He's a fine option here. He's fine. Then we have 2 cheaper options in Yandy Diaz and Travis Shaw. So I don't believe I've actually mentioned a Rays bat yet, but they are interesting. If they were in Baltimore, I think they'd be a pretty popular stack on this slate, but they're in Tampa Bay, which is not the best hitters park in the world at all, and they only have a team total of 4.84. But if this was in Baltimore, they'd probably have a team total of over 5, and they'd really be considered one of the top stacks. But still mind Diaz here versus John Means. John Means has not been great this season. He definitely gives up some power to righties. If you're looking at his splits, 194 ISO to righties, 17% K rate. Definitely someone we can use against. Also a very high fly ball rate to righties as well. And Diaz, looking at his splits versus lefties, they're pretty darn good. 272 ISO, 400 WOBA, 311 batting average. I think he's a fine option. But Travis Shaw, he's on a stack I like just a little bit better today. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. Love the Blue Jays, 3,600. Should be near the top of the order. He's pretty cheap. Highest team total in the slate. And if you're looking at his numbers versus righties, they weren't great last season, but he's fine. He's a fine option. He's on the best stack of the slate. He's dirt cheap. You get the righty on lefty matchup. The lefty on righty matchup for Travis Shaw. He's a switch hitter. But, no, he's not. I'm sorry. I was thinking of Justin Smoke, because they used to play on the same team. Not a switch hitter. He's on the left side of the plate there. Or I guess it would technically be the right side of the plate. But he's a left-handed bat versus Chris Mazza, and I think he's a fine option at only 3,600. Then dropping down to shortstop, we have Trey Turner at 5,200. again, I pretty much like all the Nationals bats here versus Spencer Howard. And Trey Turner's been hitting pretty well. And last season versus righties, he actually had some better splits with a 220 ISO. More power, I should say. He actually had a higher batting average to lefties, but he had more power to righties. And a 360 WOBA, 120 WRC plus, 512 slugging, and a 292 batting average. He has plenty of speed, so you get a stolen base upside as well. So Trey Turner's fine if you're stacking the Nationals. So it's pretty much, if you're stacking the Nationals, you're playing Turner. If you're stacking the A's, you play Semien. If you're stacking the Red Sox, you're playing Bogarts, or if you're just using him as a one-off. Or if you're stacking the Rays, you could use Adames for the most part. But either of these guys are fine. There wasn't any value options I really loved, so if you need to go cheap at shortstop, you might be able to just find one that gets a decent spot in the order maybe, but looks like this could potentially be a spend-up position for me today. But Marcus Semien, again, Jordan Lyles has been a punching bag. Semien's fine versus both sides of the plate. 240 ISO to righties last season, 516 slugging, 134 WRC plus. He's a fine option today. Xander Bogaerts, 4,200. Again, I'm not really looking to pick on Ryu today because I do respect him as a pitcher, and he's been fine this season. But don't mind Bogaerts at only 4,400 versus the lefty. He's got good numbers versus them. 261 ISO, 291 batting average, 130 WRC plus. This park's been pretty darn good for hitting in Buffalo, so I think Bogaerts is okay. Then Willie Adames at 32. It's either a Dames or a Adames. Adames is more fun to say, so I'm going to say Adames. But if it's a Dames, you can let me know. Or if you don't care, I don't either, so whatever. But only 3,900. You just get the cheap righty on lefty matchup here versus John Means. Now, if you're looking at Adames' numbers compared to righties and lefties, he was actually better versus righties last season. But he's hit lefties well, pretty okay so far this year, and I like the Rays righties here versus John Means in the Orioles bullpen. So Adames is fine if you're stacking up the Rays. Then we'll drop down to the outfield, which there is plenty of good options in the outfield, as there usually is. But we'll start with Juan Soto at a massive price tag of $5,900. But look, he crushes right-handed pitching, and Spencer Howard's not going to scare me away from Juan Soto here. Looking at his numbers versus righties, some of the best in the league. Over a 300 ISO, 414 WOBA, 416 on base percentage, 155 WRC plus, an 18% walk rate, just elite numbers all around. So if you got the money for Juan Soto in national stacks, absolutely love it. Nelson Cruz, 5,700. Anytime he's facing a lefty, he's going to make the sheet. I don't care who the lefty is. He will make the sheet, even if it's Clayton Kershaw, just because he crushes left-handed pitching. Him and JD Martinez are the best lefty mashers in the entire league for the most part. He's got a 461 ISO to lefties, 195 WRC plus, 783 slugging, and 322 batting average. He's just got such good numbers. He seems to get better as he ages. I don't know how, but I love Nelson Cruz here. It's just, he's very expensive, so I'm not sure how easy it's going to be to fit him in. But if we do play Sixto Sanchez, we should be able to spend up for a couple of spots today. Then JD Martinez, again, one of the best lefty mashers in the entire league. Now, Reed's been better than Boyd this season, so I could see you wanting to side with Nelson Cruz. But you also get a $700 discount here as well. And Buffalo's been pretty nice to hitters so far. So JD Martinez is fine. Looking at his numbers versus lefties, they're even better than Nelson Cruz's. 42 ISO, 539 WOBA, 242 WRC plus, 400 batting average, and 887 slugging. Yes, JD Martinez is a fine option here. Teoscar Hernandez, love all the Blue Jays here. 4,300. If you're looking at his splits compared to lefties and righties, so he's better overall versus lefties, but his numbers versus righties, he's still got power, but he does strike out at a 34% clip and only a 222 batting average. But look, Chris Mazza is not really someone that's going to come out here and strike out the entire lineup. If you're looking at his splits, 12% to lefties, 16% to righties. So feel free to load up this entire Blue Jays offense. He should be hitting cleanup, and I think he's an excellent option here. Then Robbie Grossman, 4,100. Love all the A's, and look, Jordan Lyles, I keep saying it, but he's just not been that good this season. Looking at Grossman's splits versus righties, only 106 ISO last season, 300 WOBA, 344 on base percentage. Not the greatest hitter out there, but he's fine. He's actually been doing okay this season. Should be hitting near the top of the order. So 4,100, I think he's a okay option. Randall Grichuk at 3,900. I could see him being pretty popular today because of the price tag. And look, I like all the Blue Jays here, and I'm sure most people are going to as well. And he's been doing excellent this season. Just take a look at his game log. He's had plenty of good games this year. So you got to like Grichuk. He's got power to both sides of the plate. Looking at his splits, 223 to lefties and actually 226 to righties. Now, overall, his numbers fall off a little bit to righties, but still, I like the power upside for Randall Grichuk here. And Chris Mazza is not a strikeout pitcher by any means. Hunter Renfroe, 3,800. Just part of this Rays righty stack that I think is pretty interesting on this slate. Again, they're going to get a downgrade here because they're in Tampa Bay instead of Baltimore, and you don't get those guaranteed nothing at bats, but there's still fine options here. Looking at Hunter Renfroe's splits versus lefties, he crushes them. 336 ISO, 364 WOBA, and just overall really good numbers. The batting average is low, but I like the power upside for Renfroe. Steven Piscotty at 3,500. He's been doing well this season, and again, I love all the A's here for the most part. He's a lot better versus lefties compared to righties. Splits versus righties aren't that promising. 129 ISO, 272 WOBA, 69 WRC plus, but I like the price tag. I like all the A's here, and Piscotty's fine. Then you have some dirt cheap options in Adam Eaton, Kevin Pillar, and Victor Reyes. And they're pretty much just in favorable lefty on righty or righty on lefty matchups here for the most part. Adam Eaton's really cheap. I like the national stack on this slate. And look, you get the cheap lefty on righty matchup here. And if you're looking at his numbers versus righties, he doesn't pack a ton of power, but only a 15% strikeout rate, double-digit walk rate, 108 WRC plus, 276 batting average. He's fine if you're stacking up the Nationals. Kevin Pillar facing a lefty. Again, not really looking to pick on Ryu. But Pillar's got some good splits versus lefties. He only has an 8% strikeout rate last season and a 241 ISO. So if you're looking for potentially a cheap home run here, Pillar is fine. High contact hitter versus lefties as well. Then Victor Reyes, he's been playing pretty well, and he's been popular the past few nights, and only 2,900. He's going to be facing a righty here. If you're looking at his splits versus righties, he had a 309 batting average last season. Not a lot of power. He's not a big power hitter, but he's a good on-base guy. 332 WOBA, 341 on-base percentage, and he's just okay at 2,900. And I could see him being popular once again because of that price tag. But that's pretty much going to be it for the video, guys. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, remember to leave a like. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. Check out the NASCAR content. If you're interested, I'll have that up later today. And I'll see you guys in the next video, and hopefully there's no games that get canceled tonight.